I'm Esther Mireku. I'm originally from Ghana, and I'm a medical doctor by profession, and my specialty area is public health. And in actual fact, even before I came into this country, I'd already specialized in public health. So I was a public health specialist before I came in here. My husband moved abroad, and I had to join him. And it was one of I'd say, the most challenging, difficult decisions to make of my life, because the last thing I wanted was to relocate. The quality of life that I had back home and where I was coming to start from was definitely not what I was prepared for. Yeah. If anything at all, even the sizes of the accommodation and everything was a real downside, as you can imagine. Because it was something I didn't want to do, and I eventually felt I had to make that choice to do. I had determined that come what may, I was going to make life successful for myself, and I was going to make it the best that I could. Okay. So I came in with that mentality of I'll do what it takes to be able to achieve what needs to be achieved. I think that was my starting point. So even before I came into this country, even before I left Ghana, I'd started putting in applications. And I came here and I had a flurry of agreed to was ended me up in Middlesbrough. And then subsequently, there were other offers asking me whether I'd reconsider salary increase and then move. And I said, no, I've settled and that was final. But sometimes there are things in life where you reflect back after a certain number of years and you think you didn't end up there just as an accident. Mm-hmm. It was meant to be. Because over the years, as things have turned out, I reflect back and I think the impacts that I've had on others, would I have made that same impact if I was still back home? Maybe I'd have made it in a different way, but not in the same way that I've made it here. I mean, one of the things, so take for example, was bringing my children in, them being at that time in an area where they couldn't see anybody of their kind. Throughout school, they are the only blacks in the school. That was very challenging for them. But the beauty of what I found here was the few black community, the unity among the black community here was a real strength, in that you didn't look up to others to support you. You looked up to each other. And I think that's something worth celebrating, because it was almost like we created our own village and supporting each other. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths we've had in this area, because it's made our young people also understand that it's not about whether I'm from Ghana, I'm from Zimbabwe, we're all one. That's something you don't get when you're back home in Africa, or even when you're in London. But when you're here, we are one. And I think that's a strength that needs to be built on, rather than looking at differences. And as well, even when you compare with other BME communities, as Africans, we are the minority. And therefore, sometimes you tend to be forgotten about. But when you have one voice, then you have a stronger voice to be able to get your messages across. And I think that's where I reflect and I say, if I'd been back home, I don't think I would have made that impact. So in our own little ways, it's about getting those voices out loud. And I think that's, for me, that's been a big thing. That's been a real big thing. I mean, I think one would probably say one of the success stories is being able to move through all the different hurdles in terms of professional development and then getting where I want to be. But for me, and I'll touch a little bit on that, but I don't see that as my biggest success, in that that's a great success, and that has influence on others who want to move along that similar journey, because it takes a lot of determination In my line of work for a long time, I've always been the only black among every team that I've ever worked in. Apart from, I'll say, the last but one job that I'm in, where we were about 3 or 4 blacks. In every team that I've worked in, I've been the only black. And being able to stand out and make that impact, I think that's a message, an unsung message that gives to the rest of the people that you work with, and therefore understanding that you've got something. And what I tended to bring as well was the experience that I brought back home, from back home. So sometimes there were things where we could have looked at it in just one direction. But bringing that diverse experience, that diverse thoughts, those challenges in, made things better. But for me, I think what I call the biggest success is that almost single voice of wherever I am. And sometimes I go for meetings and things, and I forget that I'm the only black sat in there because I don't realize it anymore. I'm so used to it that, and it's about making sure that you do what needs to be done the right way and achieving what needs to be achieved without looking at yourself and thinking, I'm black, maybe I'm not going to be accepted, I cannot achieve. It's about what's in me and what can I give. And if I had one advice for anybody, I'd say, you've got what it takes. Just go out with it. If it doesn't work in one direction, move the next direction. But don't expect anybody to do it for you. Just keep going. And I think for me, that's been one of the strongest. But it's that resilience and never giving up, despite all the hurdles. In my area of work, every part of the world that you go, the structures are different. Yeah. The way of practice is different. So I understood how I practice public health in Ghana. It's very different from how you practice public health here. So I came with a mindset of what needed to be, but I found it very, very different. And that was one of the biggest challenge, trying to understand what the system is, how things needed to be done, and what it takes to achieve what I needed to achieve. But there's also that other thing about looking for mentors and coaches within that system. There were not that many blacks in that field, but we supported each other, and we still do. And I think that's been one of the strongest bits, where we're there for each other. Yes. We support each other. And there are a few others who are not blacks, but they're also great mentors and great supporters. And it's about identifying who is there for you, who's not there for me. And that's been one of the biggest strengths. There have been hurdles in that. There have been one or occasions where you basically feel as if I'm being disadvantaged. Maybe because that person thinks I might not have it. And that's because they don't really know me and they only see in my skin color. But what's then turned out in the longer term is that they've then seen what's come out of me and they've turned around and apologized. You know. And and I always I am somebody who never takes offense. So I always look at these things and I say to myself, it's their loss. I move on, you know. And I think that's been the biggest thing. Well, if you don't want me, that's your loss. I've moved on. And ultimately, I've had people come back, then to ask of me of what some of the things I've done to help them, the very people who thought, well, maybe they shouldn't deserve it. And I think a lot of us blacks will come across that. And you'd be thinking, oh, this person is being racist against me. I've gone for that interview. Maybe I didn't get a job because I was black. I would say, yes, reflect on it, learn from it, go out and fight again. And ultimately, it gets to the point where when you put out your best, nobody can compete with it. And I've had so many interviews where I've come out where nobody can compete, and there's nothing like saying, well, because she's black, we're not going to give it to her. And that's what you want to be. You want to be the best out of the lots, and then nobody can argue with that. When you come, you're coming with your own preconceived ideas. Give yourself the opportunity to learn. Look out for those who've been here for a while and ask them about their story and their journey. They would have some words of wisdom to give to you. And learn that humility to take it in and take it one step at a time. It doesn't just happen like that. It will take quite a time to integrate. I always advise people, give yourself about 5 years as a minimum to be able to let yourself feel as if now I'm settling in. It doesn't just happen. There'll be challenges, but the most important thing is never give up. Keep going.